What's up, everybody? Welcome to another, what was it, Nevin? Seanversastions is what you want? That's correct. Okay, Seanversations. We had for a few episodes no idea what we were going to call this, and it was kind of a running joke. And then Nevin said, "Let's just call it Seanversations," and I was like, honestly, I don't care as long as I get to talk to these people. Cool. So what we're doing, I wagered that I know some of the most interesting people on the planet, and I wanted everybody out and around the planet to get to involve themselves somehow, at least listen to these wildly interesting people. You're one of them. Guest today is Bob Moore. You are a local. I mean, we may as well just start off with divulgence. I mean, I sometimes when we start an episode, I have to tell the person simply, this is where we're at. I'm just going to lay it out. I have met a lot of people, and I've become close to a lot of people, and it seems in this area particularly, or in particular, when I meet people, they know you, and they love you. You are adored by more people than most of the people that I know, and it's typically the response is not the same. That's the thing that's typical about the response is Bob was my music teacher, or I bought all of my instruments from Bob. I'll let you tell your story, but it seems every single time I talk to somebody, when they say that guy had a massive impact on my life, it's always for some different reason, and it builds this mystique around you where I don't know where anybody is coming from, but I do know that you're a beloved figure in this community, in all of the communities in this area. So I'm very glad that you're willing to sit down and talk.
Oh, it's an honor to be here, and great to have you as a fellow colleague, fellow musician.
That's
great, wonderful to be here and be able to just talk. So
I'm a drummer, so what I generally say is I get to hang out with musicians and people who are as gracious and kind as you to sit down and talk with me and consider me a peer. I might. I mean, sure.
Absolutely.
For posterity, I'll agree.
Absolutely.
But
Sure. No worries. Yeah.
So, take me through. You have this long background. There are clearly so many different avenues to your life. I love that. It's similar to how I live. There's a lot that I'm involved with, and there's a lot of things that keep my interest. You seem to be the same. At least just having followed you for the last. How long have? God, you've been on my radar for
2, 3, 4 years maybe.
No, 15 years or so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Most of the time when there's somebody in the area that's kind of a giant, present company included, I don't bother you. I don't bother them. Anybody who's out there listening who might be a long-standing giant in the scene, if I haven't met them, it's because I'm just not bothering you. If I meet people, I meet them naturally. I don't try and interject myself into their life. So no offense, if you are a giant in the scene and I haven't introduced myself to you, it's because I'm trying not to bother you. But you're someone who I've known of. I've loved your music for a long while. The cool thing about getting to know you over the last few years, I think mostly because of Joe Glenn Wixon.
Yeah, for sure. That guy is a beloved figure.
Yeah.
God bless his heart.
He's another one, man. He goes back a lot of years where everybody knows him. You know, the book Barefoot Troubadour.
Yeah, man. He's my contemporary bodhisattva. You know, he's a guy that has the biggest heart.
Huge heart.
And he just wants to share his love. He also wants to help others folks try to, he's a wonderful person to make you feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of messages that he shares through his music, but also through the other things that he does too. I love him. He's no ego, man. He's just there.
None. Yeah, it's all about how do we lift everybody up.
Right.
Which is 1,000% what we're about.
Right.
But yeah, it was I believe the holiday extravaganza is where I actually had the pleasure of meeting you, and I love the fact that I get to call you a friend now.
Yeah.
And since being able to follow you on Facebook, I love reading your writings. I grew up a poet and getting made fun of a lot for carrying a second book bag that had a dictionary, thesaurus, all kinds of notebooks. I was always writing. So getting made fun of extensively and thoroughly early on for that developed a thick skin. But what I love about your writing is it doesn't try to be anything. You're very candid, and it's very approachable. It paints a great image just reading through it, and I never know where it's going. So
Cool. Yeah.
it's really an awful lot of fun following that. So singer-song, what I know of you, we'll say this, and then I'll let you take over and tell your story. I'm familiar with your poetry, your writing, which is fantastic. You're, as far as a singer-songwriter goes, musician, instrumentalist, one of the most skilled that I know. Not flashy, wildly intuitive, and if you want to dazzle, it's like you've been doing it your entire life. And it's nonchalantly, you'll pull out something, and it doesn't look like you're trying very hard, but it's brilliant, whatever it is that you pull off. And I think it's something that would go over a lot of people's heads if they weren't a little bit familiar with music. As far as some of the other things that I've heard, you've been a teacher. You've been a member of the community and a supporter of all things arts. So on behalf of everybody, I think I can say thank you for being a stalwart and a pioneer in this community, and a lover and a supporter.
Thank you.
It means the world, and I truly appreciate it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It goes both ways. You know, people are, it's a give and take, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You give, and there's a lot of wonderful things that are happening. Learning about your music, learning about the other people that come to Joel's Christmas extravaganza, the Christmas show. Being introduced to new folks and listening to what they're doing is really cool.
It's what keeps me going.
Yeah, man, it's really cool. I still don't think I do enough of that, but it is wonderful when you hear bands that you haven't heard before, or voices that you haven't heard before, and so yeah, wonderful. Yeah.
So your background, we were talking a little bit before we got rolling, and I found out that you were from Texas.
Yep. Yeah.
And you come here by way of Pennsylvania.
Right. Yeah.
And you ended up in or around Exeter in the Seacoast of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Walk us just at whatever pace you want.
Yeah, I'll keep it short.
Sure, as long as as short as you want.
Sure. Yeah. Anyway, my dad was from East Texas, Kilgore. He grew up in Kilgore in Tyler, Texas, which is a little east of Dallas. And he actually was childhood friends with Van Cliburn, who's a very famous piano virtuoso as a kid. He was taught, his friend Van Cliburn was taught by his mom, was a very skilled classical pianist. And Van went on to become a huge success in terms of classical music. And then I think he branched out, but anyway, he also grew up in East Texas. But my dad was from East Texas. He actually took piano lessons as a boy. He didn't take from Van's mom. He had a private teacher. He's one of two boys. He had a younger brother named Franklin, and my dad's also Bob Moore. And he grew up as the older child. His dad, encouraged his music, but he was bound and determined for him to become an engineer. So
okay, sure.
So he wound up going to Notre Dame and studied chemical engineering, and then wound up at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh and for his master's. And there he met my mom, who was from South Hills of Pittsburgh, in a town called Canonsburg. And she was going to a Carlow College downtown, and a friend of my dad's who also lived in the area where my mom was from, introduced these two. And so they wound up getting married back in 1956. They got married in her hometown, Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania. And then they had, shortly after that, they had a couple of kids. I'm the oldest of 8.
Wow.
Yeah, we have 7 boys in our family, one sister.
Wow.
And yeah, and when my dad first got his first job after they got married, they went to Texas. He got a job with DuPont in a town called Orange, Texas, down near the Gulf, which is actually, I think it's a neighbor's Port Arthur, where Janis Joplin is from. So we lived there a couple of. I was born there. I was born in Orange. So was my sister, and then they moved to back to where my mom was from, because she was getting homesick for her mom, wanted to be closer to her family. So they did that, and my dad worked for Westinghouse, and I grew up in the South Hills of Pittsburgh as a kid, and I remember going to my first couple of rock concerts in Pittsburgh at the Civic Arena. There was a big dome down there where we saw some rock shows back in 1973.
Good lot of shows going on.
Good shows
yeah.
back then. Wicked good music, and we wound up seeing I think Traffic with Free. I think Free opened for Traffic, and we saw Deep Purple. We saw Pink Floyd show. They were touring Dark Side of the Moon tour, and then my parents. Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah.
A long time ago. You're talking some of the most prolific bands.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It was good music back then.
God.
Yeah, we've fallen. I was hanging out with these kids who really like music, and I convinced my folks to get a drum set. I was listening to Led Zeppelin at the time. I was listening to these rock,
Sure.
Black Sabbath, and I said, "Geez, I'd like to play drums." So my dad or my mom, they get me a drum set downtown Pittsburgh before we moved. So I was playing drums for about a year, just kind of taught myself, just banging down the basement.
I feel that.
And yeah, and so I'd also taken piano lessons before when I was younger. My dad had wanted my sister and myself, one of my younger brothers. We all took piano lessons for a number of years, probably when we were in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. And so we had a little bit of music background. Then my dad got transferred to Philadelphia, and there was about 6 of us, 7 kids at that time, I think. So we moved in 1973 to a town called Wallingford, which is just south of Media, which is the hub of Delaware County. And the town that we lived in was right next to Swarthmore College. Shortly after we moved, a friend who I became my best friend came down about a couple of days later. He was my neighbor right across the street. Came down and introduced himself. His name was Matt, and sweet guy, really friendly fellow, very personable. And we got to know each other. And he not only said, "Hey, do you want?" He played guitar, and his brother had taught him how to play guitar. And he said, "Hey, I got a friend who has a guitar who's not playing it. Do you want me to see if he'll sell it to you?" He said, "Yeah, sure, it sounds good." At the time I was playing drums, and I was also playing the piano. And so I said, "Yeah," I said, "I'm in."
Were you compelled to switch and play different instruments, or were you just trying to amass as much knowledge as you could?
Well, I was intrigued by the guitar. I wanted to play, and I loved the music, of course. But for one reason, I don't know why, I was drawn to acoustic guitar playing, even though most of the bands I was listening to were electric.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. The acoustic guitar was a sound that I really was drawn to for some reason. I bought a Yamaha off this fellow, and my friend Matt started to proceeded to teach me every song, and nice. his brother was sort of like just cascaded. His brother, his name was Dan, taught his brother Matt to play this particular song, and then he would just share it with me. And pretty soon I was learning a lot of songs from my friend through his brother, and it's good music. We were learning James Taylor stuff and Crosby, Stills, Nash, and we came across John Prine,
Oh,
and it was like, you know,
there's a deep well.
yeah, and you know, I had no idea that John Prine was, you know, this was actually early in his career, you know, but he'd come out with this album in 1971, and we're now learning these tunes, you know, a couple years later from this record, and we proceeded to learn every one, you know, and then other music in that genre. Loudon Wainwright III was also a guy who just rang true with me. Every tune that he would sing, I had to, all of a sudden I had to start seeing him live wherever he was playing. And he played often in the Philadelphia area. So,
do you think you were drawn to the songwriting? Do you think you were drawn to the storytelling nature? Was it the sound of the music itself? What was it?
I think it was the messages that they were sharing. I think it was in the words that really were drawing me.
Okay.
I mean, I love the sound of the guitar too, but
sure.
it was the actual song and the message in the song.
Melody is pleasing, but what they were saying was tying in.
Yeah, it was important. Yeah,
I feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I had the kids I was going to high school with were big fans of Wishbone Ash. There are a couple of you know, dual lead guitar players. Genesis was big, huge.
Yeah.
And we had, of course, we had to now buy every record by them and start learning as best we could, you know, songs by them. And then we would, you know, Jethro Tull, you know, and we got to start seeing some of these bands come to Philadelphia, and those are great. Those are good shows. So I was playing guitar, and I was trying to all of a sudden starting to try to finger pick, and I was doing some strumming at first, but then I was interested in doing something with the right hand, and there was this store not far, a couple of miles north in a town called Springfield. It's a Sam Goody store, and they had all of these records, you know, and so I stumbled across this one called Leo Kottke 6 and 12 string guitar. Has an armadillo on the front record, and maybe I heard it on the radio. I don't know, but I bought this record and I listened to it and I said, and so I said, well, how is he doing what he's doing? I had no idea. So I started listening. You know, I listened again and again. I said, he can't be playing in a straight tuning. He must be changing the string somehow. And so I started learning a little bit about altered tunings. And I'm sure that I learned a few of these wrong. Even I was trying to copy them, you know. But I was trying to learn these songs by ear. He does on this album called 6 and 12 string guitar. He does a version of Bach's Jesus, Joy of Man's Desiring, and I love that tune. I knew it. I think I had maybe already known how to play it on piano, and so I proceeded to try to copy what he was doing. And he has a tune on there called The Fisherman, which eventually I learned that one. He has a tune on there called Jack Fig. And, you know, I stumbled, and I tried to do as best I could. I'm sure, again, I didn't learn them note for note.
Right.
But I did the best I could.
Your version, at least.
Yeah. So, and, you know, I'd hear stuff by Jethro Tull. You know, some of his acoustic stuff sounded really good. And so I said, geez, I learned that. And so I went to Swarthmore College. They had a store there called Swarthmore Music in town. And I hooked up with a guitar player, guitar teacher, and so I started taking lessons with him. He wanted to teach me how to read music, and I said, yeah, okay. But what I really was going there is to learn these tunes that I couldn't figure out myself. And so I stuck with him for a while, and we waltzed through some of these songs, and he helped me with that. He had a pretty good ear. So, So I kind of hung in there with the guitar. We would form ad hoc bands, you know, kind of pickup bands in high school. That was fun. Some the guys played electric guitar, and they're really good for their age. And
well, they were looking at Hendrix. They were looking at Clapton.
Yeah.
They were looking at Iommi. They were looking at all these.
Yeah,
that was the explosion of the electric.
Yeah, man. They had their heroes. I had this one friend named Nick who was a year younger. I think he was in my brother's grade. And he was a big fan of the Dixie Dregs and Steve Morse. Steve Morse was his, you know, and we got a chance to see them when they toured. They were across the river in New Jersey, not far from Camden, Cherry Hill, I think it was. That was a really good show. Just as a kind of an aside, in the band, and when we would play sometimes, there were these twins who lived. They were friends of Nick, and we would go over their house and we would play, party, but we'd play music for the most part. That's the reason we would get together.
Yeah.
And we were at a party one time, and we were going from Wallingford, sort of partying at this one guy's house, and he's a friend named Al, who's in my grade. We decided to go to another party over at Swarthmore, in the town of Swarthmore. They had heard that there was something going on over there. And one of the twins, who were both good guitar players, he went off over in a separate car, and he had a telephone pole, and he was in the hospital, and he didn't survive. And so, we looked at ourselves, and we're wondering, it really didn't dawn on us that drinking and driving wasn't such a good thing back in those days.
That didn't click yet.
Didn't click yet.
It took a little while for society
It took
to
a
get
while.
there.
Yeah, it took a while. And then, of course, we look back, years later, and said, all of us should have been, we're lucky we're still here. If you know what I mean.
Before I was ever born, I lost an uncle. I don't know if I don't know that drink was involved, but a very fast Mustang was involved, and that takes a lot of people out real early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, there were a couple of those experiences, but the music was the most important thing. We had a friend in high school named Jeff, who he was again in my high school graduating class, and he had a wonderful voice. And his hero was Stevie Wonder, and Paul Rogers from Bad Company. He had this kind of really high expectation for himself to sing, at these really great range. And so he had his top 5 favorites of singers, and he had a great voice. And so when we would get together, we'd also encourage him to play. And so we started, and we did a little bit of recording back then too.
Do you have any of that stuff?
I'd have to get.
I know that's a long
I'd have
shot.
to ask, yeah. But we did a version of From the Beginning, ELP's From the Beginning, with Greg Lake as the vocalist, and but this guy named Jeff could pull that off. He could pull off these tunes, and it was fun. But of course it was just for fun.
Yeah.
And then I went off to college. I brought a guitar. I bought a new guitar, bought a Guild, and of course I did some ad hoc playing up there. I took piano lessons again while I was there.
So now you have
for a grade.
drums, competent.
Yep.
Piano,
Yep.
competent. Guitar, competent.
Yep.
Good. I would say probably at that point you're pretty good.
Still becoming, learning my way.
Sure.
So.
But your strength at that point is now guitar.
I'm playing more guitar than anything else. Yeah. So,
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And so went through college. I also got some guitar lessons while I was there, and played in a couple of duos and had fun. Mostly just for fun. And but I also was listening and didn't really. I was sort of questioning, what should I do with my life? I was there for a science degree, and I almost switched to music. Maybe I said maybe I could be a music educator, but I said, and I took a music course. I took some private lessons there, and thought about it. Looked at the number of credits that I had and what I was going to need to actually graduate, kind of thing. But in the back of my mind, I said, you're not a very good reader, and you're going to have to be a good reader to actually be teaching stuff. I don't know. I kind of talked myself out of it. Yeah, I wasn't a great sight reader, and I don't know if I'm dyslexic or what, but it didn't come easy. And I said, all right, stick with the science.
I feel that too. It's been forever trying to learn the theory side of the melody side, the notes and such.
Yeah.
The other side of music I have down, the rhythm side,
Sure.
reading and playing a lot, sight reading, all of that's fine there.
Yeah.
But for me, that other side has always been a challenge. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I'm getting there, but I'm a first grader by comparison to some of the people in this area.
It's worth it. It's always worth learning.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a lifelong learner when it comes to knowing stuff about music. But anyway.
Here they are. Without these folks, taking Seacoast Entertainer to the next levels wouldn't be happening. Not to this scale. Tangram 3DS actively supports our music and arts scene and has proudly been part of it for the last 20 years. Their creative pros bring vision to life with everything from 3D renderings and VR to video, animation, web design, and branding. As a team of artists living and working on the Seacoast, Tangram considers a thriving local culture essential to us all for the connections we make, communities we build, and creativity we foster. Visit tangram3ds.com to learn more, see their work, and imagine what they can do for you.
You had left off talking about you were up to the point of about high school. You've got drums on your side, you've got piano and guitar on your side, you're learning theory, you're playing in and out of bands, and then...
Then I wound up at Penn State. That's where I did my undergraduate work, and I was debating on whether, I was happy. It was a very large campus, saw some really good music shows up there as well.
Sure.
During that time, and some great shows, looking back. But after graduating, I decided to do some agronomy, horticulture type work. My degree was in agronomy, which is a large-scale crops and soil productivity kind of thing, soil fertility. And
you just get more and more interesting.
Anyway, I was interested in learning how to grow stuff, and met some interesting people up there in that department, and some interesting teachers. And and I debated on trying to become like something kind of a agricultural county extension agent.
Yeah.
I looked into that, even interviewed for a couple of those jobs, but most of the time they would say, "Well, you're a city boy. You didn't grow up on a farm, blah blah blah." So I said, "Okay, that's fine." I spent a summer one time on a farm just to get a taste of that, but
that's failed logic, though. You don't have to grow up on a military base to know how to be a good commander.
No,
that's ridiculous.
Well, they had a bias. Some of them were outspoken about it, but anyway, so I decided to work for a guy who they grew different types of horticultural crops in a greenhouse not far from where we lived in Wallingford, in Media, and I did that for almost a year, and then I decided I wanted to go back to school, and so I went to Drexel University and in Philadelphia downtown, and started part-time, moved to full-time, got a teaching assistantship there, and studied mostly pollutants in water, air, hazardous waste, and analysis of chemicals in water.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, sure. So, did that for a few years, and I was also playing guitar at the time, and not far from our university, there was on Monday nights they had it's called Kavanaugh's, I think. They had an open mic night down there, and so gave me a creative place to go, to play music. Again, I was learning more music. I was introduced to Nick Drake, and that was pretty cool, and a lot of good music. Still working with some Leo Kottke stuff, and other kind of folk heroes. I got to see Pete Seeger live down at the University of Pennsylvania, which is the next campus next to Drexel University, and that was almost earth-shattering to see his live show, and it really gave me an inkling to wow, these are the kinds of things that you can really move people.
You can do this too.
Yeah,
you're getting.
You can do it, and I went to the Philly Folk Festival, which was great. I think I did that twice, and then I wound up getting a job after I graduated from Drexel, and I was working in a town up the river called Conshohocken. I got hired by a company that managed hazardous waste. They basically, took people's dangerous waste, and they did it according to the regs. Would pick it up in tankers or in drums and bring it to this facility up the river in the Schuylkill River. I was there as a laboratory guy to test the drums, that kind of thing,
okay.
and make sure that they knew what they were doing, what they were sort of bulking or seeing if things weren't compatible, that kind of thing. So I did that. Was trained to do that, and then they got hired to clean up a Superfund site which is, you know, super fun,
Yeah.
was, you know, the uncontrolled hazardous waste winding up in people's water and soil and so on.
We have several of those nearby here.
Sure, right, yeah, and peas, yeah, for example, yeah.
Well, peas also. The one that comes most immediately to mind is the tannery in South Berwick.
Yep.
That was South Berwick, right?
Well,
I believe so.
you're talking about prime tanning, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned them. Eventually, when I moved up to New Hampshire, the reason I moved to New Hampshire is because I got hired by the same company we cleaned up a Superfund site near the New England Dragway in Epping. It was an uncontrolled hazardous waste site there, and we came up 1983 to do that work. We did a phase of that work to remove all the drums that were there. There were about, I don't know, 4,000 drums or something, and they had a bulk pool there where they were actually mixing all these drums to try to either neutralize or whatever they were trying to do. But people would bring their waste to this guy. His name was Paul Keefe.
Wonderful.
And they created this disaster and polluted the groundwater there, and so they closed the place. The guy declared bankruptcy, and so they hired a couple of companies to come up and clean that up. And so I was hired by a company to do that. So the company was asked to, they decided to rent a house in Newmarket, and so we spent April to maybe August at this home in Newmarket. And that's where we lived while we worked over in Epping. And one night I happened to meet a woman that was in Newmarket, and we became friends. And this eventually became my fiance, so we kind of crossed paths at a place called Friendship Lanes on 108, and then we started to stay in touch. And so eventually, the next year, I decided to get done at the place where I was working and came up to move in with my wife. She was living in Exeter at the time. We weren't married yet, but we got married a couple years later.
Is it the same woman you're talking about?
Yep, her name is Pat. And
Shout out to Pat.
Yep, shout out to Pat, my better half, my love. Eventually we got married in '86, but I came up in '84 to New Hampshire, and it was a very exciting time. Also, was still interested in music, so I was going to, while I was here and working in the same line of work, I was checking out open mics and places that were featuring music, and mostly in bars, and it was fun. I met a lot of music people up here.
Yeah, anybody that knows me or pays attention to these podcasts know I'm a big fan of open mics, a big proponent of getting out, going to open mics, supporting the community, building by that way. There are so many in the area, and it means so much to so many people. Yeah,
it was important. And at the time, my wife was really into the nightlife too, and she knew some places, and so we would check them out. Usually it was a Monday or a Tuesday night. Usually it was early in the week.
Yeah.
And there was a place in Exeter called Sparky's. I met a lot of folks there, and stayed and became good friends with a lot of these folks. And for whatever reason, I was working at a lab down in Hampton Falls. There was an analytical company down there where I was doing similar work that I did at Drexel, analyzing water for chemicals in the water pollution kind of thing. And I found that if I wanted to get strings for my guitar, I was going to have to take a ride from Exeter over to Portsmouth. And actually, in Newington here, there's a place called Guitar Warehouse, which is just down the street.
Yeah.
It's not there anymore,
Not
but
anymore.
it was run by a guy named Rod Wells. And I don't know if Daddy's had started. I don't know if they were open yet, or they were going to be open fairly soon. Maybe they were.
Soon around that time, they opened in Connecticut. I think it was a little earlier than that.
Yeah.
And then Portsmouth was, I believe, 84, 85.
Yeah, maybe they did have a store. Yeah, that's right. So this
wasn't late 80s. It was early 80s.
Right. So
right downtown.
So this was about the time. It was about 84, 85, and I was working at this place, and I said, maybe I'd like to. I don't want to have to ride to Portsmouth to get strings or accessories or whatever. maybe I think Exeter needs a music store. So I ran it by my wife. She said, yeah, let's look into this. And so eventually we did. We decided to open up a music store in Exeter, 1986 in September.
What was the name of that?
And it's called Exeter Music.
Exeter Music.
Yeah, same place. Still there.
We got to say the names.
Yeah, sure.
Because like with Daddy's Chunky Music, that's one of those Seacoast institutions.
Yeah.
And Exeter Music is one of those ones where when I worked at Daddy's Chunky Music when I moved back up from New York after college.
Yeah.
I worked at Daddy's Chunky Music. I left the corporate life and I went back to music.
Was it in Portsmouth or?
It was in Portsmouth.
Wow, yeah.
So at this time it had already moved to Newington. This was 2004.
Right.
So it had already moved out of downtown into Newington. And one of the most frequently mentioned names was Exeter Music. People would talk about music stores that they either have gone to or went to, and I would hear all about it. But it was that and Acoustic Outfitters.
Sure.
Were the two biggest that I always heard about.
Yep. Yeah, Acoustic Outfitters. Trying to remember the fellow's name. He was a real nice fellow. Gary was his name. I don't remember his last name, but yeah, I think we opened in '86, and I think he might have opened. He opened about 5 years later, I would say, or maybe a little bit later. But real nice fella. Ran more kind of high-end guitars.
Yeah.
And we did mostly student guitars. We also did CDs, records, and we were doing the music thing too.
So you were recording as well.
Well, I a little bit of recording, but we were mostly as a store. We were trying to figure out, okay, if we're going to be a music store, what do we need to make, what do people want?
Yeah.
And so we had accessories, we had school supplies for band instruments, strings, even violin and cello strings, and all the accessories that went along with that. We started to find people that knew how to do repairs. We started learning how to do some repairs ourselves.
Sure.
And then we started teaching, early on we started teaching lessons. Hired a guy named, we came across a woman named Stephanie Curcio, who was a harp player, very, very excellent harp player. And she had a son named Ron Curcio. I don't know if you know Ron, but
no.
He, in the music trade today, he's known as Duncan Watt. That's Ron.
Okay, so I did know that Duncan Watt's real name is Ronnie because I know a friend of his from way back.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that for the first 4 years I knew Duncan.
Right.
And so his mom
was a very fine harp player.
Phenomenal harp player, which explains
Stephanie.
why he's a virtuoso.
He is. He was then. He's very talented.
Oh, yeah.
Very talented. And he was, at the time, believe it or not, he was actually in a band in Boston playing guitar. And he was writing songs. And I forget the name of his.
I'd love to know the name of that band.
Yeah.
He's obsessed with band names.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I did his podcast, the Muse podcast,
Cool.
which I'm every now and then I break the fourth wall. Duncan, please bring the Muse podcast back. It's one of my favorite podcasts. All interviewing bands and featuring new music that they're working on. Awesome podcast. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Anyway, so we
Shout
hired
out Duncan Watt.
So we hired Ron, and he worked for us, and he also taught lessons for the first year or two, and then he decided, and we decided that he was going to start his own piano school. So I think he started to teach out of his home. But we usually always had a piano teacher there, and came across a lot of good musicians. We offered violin lessons, piano lessons, and guitar lessons, and we eventually had maybe 3 or 4 guitar teachers that were there. We had a drum teacher that was there. His name was Peter Mudis. He has a brother named Chris. I'm not sure what happened to Peter, but nice fellow, very talented drummer. And so we did that for a while, and because I started to get the notion that maybe I could teach too. I started teaching guitar, and I said, well, maybe I need to know how to read. So, and I wanted to be able to share that with the, and so all the books that we were selling, I said, it helped me to actually start to learn to read. And so I was sort of teaching myself out of these books and learning more about classical, learning more about fingerstyle. And I even went over to the Exeter Academy. There's a really fine classical player there named Bob Squires, Robert Squires, who I think he's retired now, but he taught in their music department, and I took some classical lessons from him. I was learned a lot in a very short amount of time about approach to classical guitar. And so I just became a little bit more fluid, and I started to say, and some of the music that I was learning was inspiring me to start to write my own stuff. So I started to write some original tunes, and I really credit just the teaching aspect to bringing out the creative side of myself. To say, well, that sounded cool. Why don't I try this?
Yeah.
And so I started to do that, and I was also writing songs at the time, just because I was listening to a lot of music. And I said, let me try my luck at that. And back in those days, I was writing songs that sort of was trying to be a little bit reflective on, kind of laughing at myself, trying to find the funny side of life, kind of thing, and trying to work that humor into songwriting, and trying to still be genuine about it. So I was writing songs, and I got the notion I bumped into a lot of musicians that were trying to do that too, like Harvey Reid, who's still playing. Well, Cormac McCarthy. I came across Cormac. It was years ago. Ed Gerhard. I don't know if you know Ed, but
I don't know him personally.
oh man, when I first came up to the area, I saw Ed Gerhard play at a church up in Durham, and he was opening for John Peralt. And John was playing in a trio at the time with Mike Rogers and very fine flute player. She's a very talented painter as well, but her name escapes me, but she was amazing.
Must not be the phenomenal Cynthia Chattis, because you know that name right off the top of your head.
Barbara London. Do you know Barbara?
Barbara London. I've heard the name. I don't know her.
Amazing player. Very fine painter too. But this was back in maybe '85. This is a long time ago.
Okay.
And Ed Gerhard was just he hadn't come out with a record yet, but he was playing some of the stuff from his first record, and he was blowing me away. And so I was really drawn to his music, and so he came out with a record, then he came out with another record. We said, hey, and I introduced myself. I think I probably introduced myself at a show. And I said, hey, we got a music store. Would you want to come down and do a workshop? And so we did. We actually made room down at the store, and he came down and he gave a guitar workshop. And then we did that more than maybe 3 or 4 times.
So he was well attended.
Yeah, he was gaining a fan base.
Cool.
And people are learning about him and asking about him.
Yeah, good move.
Anyway, I was really very influenced by what he was doing.
Do you know when that started? Has that always been a thing, a feature with music stores, that you bring people in and you do?
Well, I think Daddy's had done it from time to time. Other music stores, Gary did that at Acoustic Outfitters. They would bring people. He used to have a jam on Saturdays toward the end of the day, and he would have like a bluegrass jam, and people would just come and they would share songs and so on. But every now and then, I think he would feature someone there.
So I feel like that's something that's disappeared with the disappearance of music stores.
Yeah,
it's more than a demo. You know, it's maybe not as rigid as a clinic, but something that people can go and interact with, like these lightning rods of creativity and capability.
Yeah, those were good things. Looking back, they were very beneficial. Helpful to the artists, but also very helpful to the students that were there, the people that were there to want to learn, pick the brain of the artist and want to know, some pointers about what they were doing.
I'm going to make more than a mental note. I'm going to make a verbal note to Nevin. That's something that we ought to try to
pursue that.
Bring back through some of what we're doing here with Seacoast Entertainer, is bring some of these features,
Sure.
Try and pile some people in to learn some stuff from some of the giants that are just out there doing their thing right now.
They're still here. They're still doing it. Yeah. So anyway, so that was, so my wife and I, we did our best growing the business, and she was actually working at a bank. She had gone back to school to learn a trade, and she wound up working at a couple of banks in town in Exeter. And then eventually I encouraged her to come, and she actually worked for me full time. And I got the bright idea to want to teach some of the science stuff that I'd learned at Drexel. So I actually went over to apply for a job at New Hampshire Community Technical College in their science department. They were starting up an environmental program there, a certificate program, and I don't know. It just I kind of lucked into it, and I applied, and they gave me a job. So I started teaching environmental courses at this community college in Stratham. There was also a branch campus here, right across 16 in the Pease Air Force Base.
Yeah.
There was it was again in a converted barracks there, a branch of the New Hampshire Community Technical College in Newington or Portsmouth. So I taught some classes there. Anyway, and that was good for me, although it began to be a little bit stressful to be doing both of those things.
Yeah.
So I was doing some community college teaching and also trying to run a store. My wife was really doing most of the heavy lifting at that time, and it really wasn't fair to her. I was available as best I could, but it was only there really on a Saturday to help. When I became full time, anyway. So
how old are you at this point?
So I'm probably late 30s now, probably 38, maybe 30, 36, 37, 38, something
So
like that.
you feel like you've maybe stretched yourself a little thin with interests, and at this point you're in that work your butt off kind of time frame in your life where you're just like burn.
Yeah, it was definitely a burnout kind of years, and started also to be a little bit taxing on my physical body and so on. So I knew I had to make a change. So I decided to go to school to become a public school teacher, and I was going to do that full time, and we were going to turn over the business.
Yeah.
And so we decided to do that. I did go back to school to teach. I got certified to teach biology, and I was going to become a public school teacher, and we were going to sell the business. My wife she helped. We actually found a buyer. It was wonderful. They're still owning it. This guy named Rich Bowles, who still owns it today, and we sold it to a partnership of him and a guy named Steve Brennan. And I went off to teach school, and they continued to do the lesson thing and the good things that we were doing there, and they ran the business very well. And we were happy that kind of baton, handing the baton to someone else worked out well, because we wanted the music store to be available for the community. It was an important thing. And so
they're still going today.
Still going. Yeah.
And they're still offering the same stuff.
They've expanded. They bought the downstairs. They put in more music rooms down there. So they probably have at least a half a dozen guitar teachers that teach there.
And that's Exeter Music.
Exeter Music. At least
Get
one.
out there.
At least one piano teacher. They may have more than one, and they have a drum teacher. And I think they have other lessons. They may have some woodwind instruments there too. But yeah, it's a wonderful business. And
awesome.
Wonderful business. And a guy named Alex Potvin who works there. He's Rich's. If you know Alex, but
I've heard that name. I don't know him personally, but there's another name I know.
He's a wonderful guy. Really, really, very warm guy. And so him and Alex and Rich are the guys that run the business now, and they're doing an amazing job. They weathered the pandemic, which a lot of businesses didn't do.
Yeah, that's a tough thing.
And yeah, especially as a small business. So they did that. So anyway, so I went to teach public school, and I wound up doing that for. I went to teach at a school in Pelham, and I did that for about 18, 20 years, I guess.
So that takes you through to the early 2000s.
Yeah. Well, I started in 1999, and I ran. I became a chemistry teacher and other sciences, and I did that till probably 2020, right about the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, it was weird when that happened. But
I played soccer growing up, and I played for Belmont High School, and we played Pelham twice.
All right. Yeah.
And the first time we played them, they beat us and they knocked us out of the, I want to say, quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Second time, we played them. We knocked them out.
Good for you. Yeah, good.
We then played Raymond, who had been a trouble school for us. Had beaten us. We knocked them out.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, good, man.
We actually beat them in the
Cool.
state finals.
Good for you. Good.
But I always remember Pelham
They were.
because you guys.
They're pretty formidable.
They were good.
Yeah.
They are very aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah. There was
aggressive enough to knock out our aggressive team.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I think everybody has their heyday. In terms of schools. Pelham always, generally speaking, had a good sports program. What really wowed me while I was at Pelham is they had this art teacher that came up. They had this guy from California. His name was Mike Norton, who was a ceramic guy, and they had this guy with this wonderful ability to encourage people's artistic ability in terms of paint. His name's Casey Locke, and he nurtured this art out of all these high school kids that you'd never guess that they were so talented as artists. And it was like, every year they would put on these wonderful art shows, and then they would go to these competitions and come back with all these gold star winners, or first place, second place, and really shining. All these kids. I'd had a lot of them coming through my science classes and never guessed that they were so talented, but. They displayed their artwork through the school, and it was just amazing to watch. I loved that.
Yeah.
And we also, the music program kind of struggled, but then they hired this guy named Joe Mundy, who I think had spent time in a band school in the Midwest. Kind of like one of them top Big Ten kind of football schools. Might have been it was in Chicago, but. He came to the school and he turned the music program upside down, almost single-handedly.
In Chicago?
Or no, at Pelham. They hired him. He'd graduated and from a school that marching bands was huge.
Big thing for them, yeah.
And he brought in this kind of percussion sense and this band sense, and also he was very fluid in jazz. His appreciation for lots of different types of he knew the jazz standards. He had that down.
I vaguely remember that my band director in high school, Ray Craigie, was friends with the gentleman at Pelham.
Oh, Joe. Was it
must,
Joe?
Must have been him.
Yeah.
He was there for a good period of time.
He was. He was there for probably maybe not quite 10 years, and he eventually went to Londonderry, but he really he did a great job at getting that music program to flourish. And a lot of these kids that he had, they wound up going to Berkeley. Some of them went on to really take themselves seriously, and some wanted to become music teachers like him. And some of the people in the art program, they wanted to become art teachers like their art instructor. It was really wonderful to see that. That Pelham really did a good job with the arts and music. There was none of that, the way that they could present the art and the music and put on the programs, the holiday programs and those kinds of things. You could see that the families, the parents and the relatives that come in for the shows, you could tell how proud they were. And when they came to thinking about budget cuts, the art and music was not going to get cut. You'd hear these kinds of things in other school districts, but not.
I heard it constantly in
of course.
Belmont High School. What else are we cutting?
Of course. but there, because they were doing such a good job, you wouldn't hear whispers of that. They'd say, no, we got a good thing going, and
don't break the only thing working.
Right. So that was cool to watch. And then, but in 2020, I decided I was going to retire, and I was about I don't know, it was early 60s now. And so, and I, always had the notion to want to do some recording, and maybe I'd been doing some songwriting on the side, and I'd bring my guitar into class, and share songs that I was working on, and I was writing some poetry at the time. So I was sharing some of that, but I wanted to do that a little bit more. So I decided to retire, and then get to doing some recording, and tried to find some people that maybe wanted to do that, and I really wasn't at that time really interested in doing band thing. It was really more the solo thing. So I wanted, I looked around to see where I could do that. I bought some equipment, did some recording at home, and back in those days there was something called a DAT machine, a DAT tape.
Oh yeah.
Remember
ADAT.
digital audio tape, right? So I did some of that stuff at home, and looked around trying to find people that actually did this kind of recording stuff, and I hooked up with Chris Magruder up in Thundering
Sky.
Yeah.
There's a legendary name.
Yeah.
Shout out
Yeah,
Chris
Chris.
Magruder and
Yeah.
Thundering Sky. He's recorded an awful lot
He certainly has.
of
Yeah.
Seacoast musicians
Yeah.
and people from all walks.
Yeah.
Really, he doesn't specialize specifically in any
Nope.
specific thing, from what I understand.
Nope.
He's just an extremely talented recording engineer.
He has great, wonderful ears, great ears.
Yeah, and a
Yeah.
virtuosic producer to some extent
Yes,
as well. Some of
indeed.
the most accomplished minds I can think of
Yes.
credit him with
Yeah,
at least a fork in the road,
indeed.
in the way that they look at stuff.
Right, right,
But definitely growth.
right. Yeah, he's got a great, easy to work with, and he can hear stuff, and he's pretty particular, which is great. It's
Yeah.
good to have a critical ear, and so anyway, I some of the recording stuff that I had done at home, I brought to him and asked him, I got this stuff, could you master it? And he said he could do that. And also I did I wrote a couple more tunes, or I think actually I learned some of the instrumental guys that I was listening to for guitar was Ed Gerhard, also Adrian Legg. He's an English guitarist, very fine. Had a chance to see him touring. A guy named Stephen Bennett, who was a harp guitar player. He played 6 string and then 6 harp strings, and he'd play, one of those kind of guys. Yeah. Michael Hedges actually, took a shot at harp guitar too. He's a very fine player. But Stephen Bennett wrote this one tune that I really enjoyed. It's called Waltz for a Maple Tree. And so I asked Chris if I could record it at his place, and we did that. And it came out well. So I had a collection of instrumental guitar things that I recorded at Chris's, and he engineered it. And then I eventually came out with a CD. It's called Bridge with a View. One of the tunes on it is called A Bridge with a View, but there are other instrumental tracks that are on there, mostly just solo, except for the first song on there, which has a dual. There's another guitarist who I met and lived in Exeter. His name is Neil Zweig, who still plays, as far as I know, but we played as a duo for a while, and also as a trio with another guy from Stratham, but I had more time to be able to pursue these things after retiring and so on. But so anyway, I came out with that, and was happy with that. And then I had the notion of wanting to write songs, and I had a collection of songs that I was interested in doing. So I bumped into a guy who was from a band called the New Dillons, a guy named Jim Riley, who was originally from Pennsylvania, but moved up here because his wife got a job, I think, in one of the hospitals. Might have been Wentworth Douglas. She was a nurse, and so I bumped into Jim while I was still at the music store, and he had moved to Nashville, and he lived in East Nashville at a studio there. He was working as a producer engineer down there with a guy, and so I contacted him. I said, hey, actually he contacted me, I think. The last couple of years I was in high school, I was teaching, and he said, hey, I've been doing some producing down here. You want to come down? I said, and some wheels started turning in my head. I said, that sounds like a fun. I got some songs, and so I 2015, 2016, I think it was, I said, yeah, I'm going to come down. And so I went down for about 3 or 4 days, and we did some recording down there. And it was fun. And they came out pretty well. The guy that was doing the producing also played drums, also played keyboard, and so he was multi-talented.
Is this on an album, or is this a EP, single?
Well, eventually it was originally going to be an EP, and we wound up doing, I think, 7 tracks. And so one instrumental, but the rest of them were songs.
Is this something that's on digital services, or does this have to come through you and physical media?
It turned into it's available both ways.
Both,
So
okay.
yeah. So anyway, I did that in 2016. Came back. I was pretty happy. Good experience with this guy named Jim Riley, and then I had some more songs that one of my favorite songwriters. I have a whole list of songwriters but is a guy named David Olney who just passed 2021. He passed sort of about a year into the pandemic, and if I had time, I'd tell you very interesting. Well, I'll tell you the story.
Yeah, I've had it.
David. I bumped into David a number of times. I first met him at the music store. He'd come in. He actually knew some people at the academy because he actually graduated at Phillips Exeter Academy, and then eventually went to Nashville to become a songwriter. And he would come back through the area, and he'd come back with like a new record that he was working on, and share it, and we would talk, and we actually did some gigs while he was up in the area. We decided to play together. We played the Press Room. We played at Loaf and Ladle when the Loaf and Ladle was still in Exeter, and
Oh yeah.
they had music. They had a music venue there, which was great. Wonderful place.
Yeah, I've heard an awful lot of shows.
Yeah.
At Loaf and Ladle.
Yeah, big names came through there,
Yeah.
and so anyway, I met David and was very enthralled by his music. And there's a bunch of songs that I love to do. Some of them I actually did live, but there's a couple of them I wanted to record, and I hadn't recorded them down in Nashville, so I decided to record them up here. But he was playing in this place called the Fallout Shelter. I don't know if you know where this is. It's
The
in
Fallout Shelter.
It's in Norwood, Massachusetts.
No, I don't know the
south-
Fallout
south-
Shelter. I remember the bomb shelter. I
Yeah.
played there a lot of times in Manchester, but not the Fallout
Yeah.
Shelter.
Anyway, there's this place in Norwood that do very cool, very small living room type shows. There's a very small crowd, but it's professionally done. They got someone there that's actually videotaping the whole show, live shows. And I don't know how they make a go of it in terms of money, but there must be somebody there as a sugar daddy that makes that happen.
benefactor, yeah.
I think kind of like Jimmy's Jazz and Blues, the names that come through there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I asked David when he was there, I said, hey, I got this tune, one of your tunes I'd really love to record, it would be okay? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, well, wonderful, thanks. So I found Jim Prendergast. I don't know if you know Jim, but
I've heard that name. That's another one
Yeah.
where I'm familiar with the name. I've never introduced myself.
Jim's he has a studio. It's called Mill Pond Studios in Portsmouth,
Heard of
and it's right off of Islington Street near the as the train runs through, north south. And so I asked him, I'd heard good things about him from a couple of friends, so I decided to record some more tracks there, including a David Olney song. And I think I recorded another 3 or 4 songs there. I had Jim Riley's engineer send the tracks that we had done down in East Nashville, and then we mixed this into a project, which became a song, became an album, so that was sort of a kind of thing that I'd been wanting to do, and that was finished back in 2018. So that was a little while back.
What was the name of that album?
Let's see, Place to Start.
Place to
Go to
Start.
Place to Start. Yep. And that's available too as a physical. It's also available online.
Anybody who knows what they're doing, who's watching this podcast, is constantly hitting pause, going and finding the album, listening to it,
Well-
and then coming back. That's
Well-
what everybody should be doing. So let me
That's okay.
say, welcome back, everybody.
Anyway, it's called A Place to Start, and that was. I had Cynthia Chattis help me out with that.
Phenomenal player.
What amazing! Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I actually, maybe I'll go on a digression. I was attending a show in Newmarket one time. I think it might have been at Cracked Skulls, and Craig Worth was there.
At Crack Skulls, before moving to Newmarket then.
This was in Newmarket, yeah.
Oh, it was in Newmarket,
This was in
not
Newmarket.
Newington.
Oh, sorry, yeah. This is
Okay.
This was in
I was
Newmarket.
like, I didn't realize they were in Newington, but
Yeah.
It's
Sorry, yeah.
fantastic.
Craig's downtown. They used to do music there, and nice place. but they would do open mics. But they
Yeah.
had Craig was there. Craig Worth, who's a very fine songwriter, excellent songwriter. And I'd known Craig through the music store. I'd met him years ago, but he was doing some songs one evening. He said, yeah. And I also learned through Craig that they do this thing out at Star Island, which is called the Writers in the Round, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so
I know of that through Guy Capisolaccio.
Right.
Who goes
right,
every year.
right. So
Speaking of another giant
Yeah,
from the area,
yeah.
Guy he was here. I don't know in what order these are going to release,
Yeah.
but Guy Capisolaccio came in here and recorded a podcast with us.
oh, cool. Yeah.
What a treat it is
Yeah.
to get to talk to Guy
You're,
for
yeah,
any period of time.
Yeah.
But for 2 hours, that was fun.
yeah. He is. I don't know who Guy is. I mean, I know who he is, but I mean, I don't know what plane he's from.
You
know, I
That's a
don't
good
know
way
where
of
he's from.
putting it. We all know
But
him, but we don't really know how he ended up here.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I love him as a human being.
Yeah,
And as a musician, you know, a wonderful musician. He's so creative.
yeah.
But anyway, I met Guy through Craig. Craig did this kind of presentation of his original songs, which were great to hear one evening in Newmarket. And he said, yeah, we're doing this writers retreat. We've been doing it for a couple of years now out at Star. You should come. And I said, cool. How do I say, you know, and I learned how to get there. So I went out the first year. This must have been 2013, 2014. And I proceeded to meet all these people that were, you know, kind of enjoyed to do the same thing, write. There's poets out there as well. And Deidre Randall, who's she's a publisher now, but also a musician. She actually was a former guitar student that I actually had learned. I first met Deidre as a guitar student at Exeter Music, you know, years ago.
Were you her teacher?
I was, yeah.
You
were. I was her teacher, yeah. And we got to know each other then, but she had started this thing out at Star Island, I think maybe with Mara Tirabassi, and eventually she handed it over to Craig. And then, you know, they had this every year in September,
Yeah.
second weekend in September. And so I went out one year. I worked it in somehow into my teaching schedule, and I happened to meet Mara Flynn. Was out there for the first time. Do you know Mara?
I do not know
Oh,
her.
what-
I
what-
know of
what-
her.
what-
I've listened to her, I
what-
believe, on a podcast.
What a fine singer.
Do you know the podcast that Guy and Dylan Matrano are doing?
Yes. Yes.
Burst and
Burst and Bloom, right?
podcast?
Exactly
Yeah, I
right.
believe she was on one of them, or
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah.
maybe two of them, but
Yeah.
one of them definitely.
Yeah.
Really interesting lady.
Oh yeah, she's a treat. Very talented.
Very
talented.
talented.
And what a voice. She has
Yeah.
a gorgeous golden voice.
Yeah.
And so I.
She's someone who I wouldn't introduce myself to, but if I knew her, I'd be like, "This is fantastic."
Oh, you should. Yeah. Anyway, you should. Yeah, you should meet her. Anyway, so I met Mara for the first time out there. I met Cynthia. She was out there for the first time too. Cynthia
Okay,
Chattis
so
was there.
that's where
yeah.
that combo comes, because I absolutely love listening to the two of you perform together.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite things about
Oh,
Joel
thanks.
Glenn Wixon's extravaganza
Thank
every
you, yeah.
year,
Yeah.
is I get to hear you and Cynthia.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, I met her for the first time when I was. She had this thing out there called a Shruti box, which is this instrument with the bellows,
Yeah.
which you can just pick a note and then it becomes this drone music background, and she sings these wonderful kind of Celtic things on top of them, and when you hear her do that just alone, it puts you into a trance. It's like spell. It's like a spell. So I heard her do this for the first time out there. I was wild. Heard Mara for the first time. Was wowed by her. Heard Guy for the first time, and I said, I just met Guy. I
I got to go here every year.
I just met Guy for the first time, and I said, man, where who is this guy?
The answer to that is one of the most prolific singer-songwriters
Yeah.
who has ever lived, and
Yeah.
probably who ever will live.
Right? Yeah.
And he
yeah.
just happens to reside in the seacoast of New Hampshire, in this sleepy little backwater area that's somehow more densely packed with world-class musicians than
Yeah.
probably anywhere, including
Yep.
New York,
Yeah, musicians,
Austin,
artists.
Nashville.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's
Yeah.
really weird. And sitting somehow quietly right at the center, not drawing much attention to himself, is Guy
This guy.
Capisolaccio.
Yeah.
I mean, he puts out, 16 to 25 albums a year?
I'd say that's low.
That's,
I'd say-
yeah,
I'd say
probably. That's probably low.
Yeah, he does. He cranks them out. He has all these projects that are sort of maybe even half or three-quarters done, and he can just get right back to them, and eventually say, "Yeah, I got to finish that," and he does, and he finishes them, or sometimes he reaches out to other people that he's met, and will hand that project over to them, and they'll do the engineering or producing for him.
He's one of the most collaborative people.
Yes, he is.
I've ever met.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he is that.
And you want to do your best for him. Every single person I find, when they get that nod, when they get tapped by Capisalatro, they go, "My God, how can I serve this?"
Yeah.
It's not about ego. It's about how can I do the best for whatever work he's presenting
for
to me.
the music. It's for the music. Yes,
God,
it is.
it's just such an honor.
Indeed.
He covered one of Cursed on Earth's songs, and I know for a fact that it's one of the highlights of Ryan, a member of Cursed on Earth.
That is
one of the highlights of his life is the fact that Guy covered The Winter Hearth, our first and only Christmas song.
Wonderful.
If you want to listen to it, it's terribly depressing, but it's called The Winter Hearth, and it's on Joel Glenn Wixon's Holiday Extravaganza CD. I love Guy's version. It's really incredible. Sorry.
No, totally.
You met Guy, you met Cynthia.
Yeah.
And
Yep. I met a guy named Chris George. I don't know if you know Chris, but
I listen to him every year.
He also comes to Joel's. I met Chris for the first time, and so I'm meeting like this half a dozen folks that all
heavy hitters.
Yeah, they all have all these kind of juices in them, and all these great ideas, these new songs that they're trying for the first time. It was just wonderful. So I said, geez, so I kept doing that. I said, I got to do this again next year. I got to do this. So I did, and I got to meet other fine poets, and the songwriting leaders that would come, and the poet leaders that would come. Get to meet them, and a woman named Ellen Taylor. She's the poet. Well, she actually coordinates the whole weekend, along with Craig, and. But she's a very fine poet in her own right. Teaches up in Maine, and anyway, I got to meet her. So anyway, just a great experience, and to know all these folks and to stay in touch with them. They become friends, fast friends, and then you can stay in touch with them and collaborate if you want. If you want to work together, taking a poem and turning it into a song, you could do that, or vice versa. There's wasn't Ellen, but one of the women that attended one weekend, her name is Mary Louise Sheehan, who's a fine painter but also a poet. She had some friends up in the Lakes area, and one of them was a woman named Priscilla Burlingham. Priscilla is a woman she had her 90th birthday a couple years ago, so she must be 92 now, 93. But Mary learned that Priscilla wanted to go to STAR, but she was in a fixed income, and was wondering if she contacted STAR and said, "Hey, this is a good friend of mine, but she doesn't have really, is there a way that you could swing to bring Priscilla out to STAR for the first time?" It's kind of like what do they call that? One of these things that you have to do at the end of your life, or anyway.
Bucket list.
Bucket list. Yeah. It was on her bucket list, and so she said, she said, "I'm going to see if I can help out Priscilla." So she wound up getting Priscilla to go out there with a free ride. There's a 89, 90-year-old woman out there now, in the midst of a very, very fine poet, wonderful poet, and she also likes to write song lyrics, and also happens to be a fine painter, excellent painter. So she comes out, and this year Dan Blakesley was out there doing the songwriting leading. And
speaking of heavy-hitting names in the area.
There you go. And so Dan was out there, got to meet him and work with him for a weekend. He gave us a prompt one day. This might have been the first night, might have been a Friday night. Gave us a prompt, and it got Priscilla to thinking, and so she wrote some words down. After we were done, she said, "I'd really like to put this to music. Could you put this to music?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd be glad to help." And so we went out on the porch, and we proceeded to write a song to her words, which became a song called Corners. And the other folks that were out there, they liked it. And we thought it was a good song, so we decided to go to Chris Magruder's, and we recorded it there. Cynthia Chattis also came with us, and
So everybody right now should be hitting pause and looking up Corners.
it's a beautiful song.
By
And it's by Priscilla Burlingham. It's her words. I set it to music, and the arrangement was done over at Chris's with Cynthia singing harmony vocals and also flute. It's really
awesome.
a pretty
Can't wait to
tune.
look that up.
And Priscilla was really happy with the way it came out. Mary was tickled because here she got this woman to come out, that it was on her bucket list to do it, and she wound up, having a good experience while she was
Not
out there. So,
only did she get to enjoy and experience
Right.
it,
yeah,
it fired up some serious creative
Yeah,
juices, and a
was
song
cool.
was born.
yeah, it was cool. It was cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that was a good experience. Anyway, so I enjoyed doing that. And I don't know, let's see. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about poetry if it's okay.
Oh yeah, talk about
so,
everything and anything you want.
Yeah. So back when I was at the music store, I was really into music, but for whatever reason I was having a kind of a hard time. Feeling extra stressed. I think I need a weekend getaway. So I went up to the Water Street bookstore. I bought a book on Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson. I don't know what moved me to buy a book on him, but
A fantastic writer
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
probably brought you to do
Yeah.
that. I bought
So-
a number of books by Emerson.
Yeah.
Love Emerson.
yeah. So I had no idea. I didn't read much of his stuff at all. I didn't really know anything about him. I buy these essays by him, and I go up to the mountains, and I'm up there with a guitar, but I'm reading these essays, and they're just like killing me. I'm saying, oh my God, who is this guy? And how does he know this stuff? And how can he predict the future? Like he had this like foresight about what he was saying, and he was elevating the spoken word and Shakespeare and how important the word was. How important language was, and thought that poets were like, he was just like bringing them, up to a very, very high caliber, saying this is very important. If you're going to do anything, do this,
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm going to try my luck at doing some of that, and so I started to write, and was inspired by what he had to say, moved by some of his words, and so I started to write some poems, and then started to look at other poets and local poets. I bumped into a woman named Pat Parnell, who was a poet fixture, but was still teaching, I think, at Chester College over in Chester, Pennsylvania. She was an English teacher, and was from Virginia, but had landed in Stratham with her husband, and was teaching over in Chester, but was also a poet. She was also a very fine poet, and she would have poetry workshops at her home, and she was learning the other poets that wanted to do the same thing, and she created sort of a workshop space at her house, and then we would trade homes and go to different people's houses, but she would invite these people over, and we would share our poems and then have kind of comments about them and how they moved us, or maybe some suggestions on how you could make it better. And she became my mentor, and so I learned from her, and I met other people through her in terms of poetry, and eventually what a good poem was. One of the people that I met from Pat was a guy named Robert Crawford, who was a sort of a Robert Frost. He was really he had Robert Frost's thing down. He must have been doing a lot of reading.
That was my particular favorite.
Yeah.
I would rewrite Robert Frost poems. I would memorize Frost poems.
Yeah.
Anytime we had to do something for poetry in school,
Yeah.
I almost always chose Frost.
Yeah.
Big fan.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, I think I was not mature enough, but I remember reading some Frost. I think when I used to live in a home in West Philadelphia when I was going to Drexel, and we would share a home with a number of other students that were going to different schools there, and one of them had a collection of Frost, and I read it when I must have been early 20s or something, and for some reason it wasn't. I would read it again, and I wasn't getting something, that I was missing something. And so it wasn't until I was probably maybe mid-30s now that I was actually reading it again and saying, oh, this is very, very interesting. And the way he was using words and what did he really say here, and then read it again and read it again,
Yeah.
keep reading it. You can get a different take every time you read it.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful. And of course, it's all based on your own experience of what you bring to the poem too.
Very personal.
Yeah.
A lot of his stuff, he can go a lot of different directions.
Yes.
There's a lot of leap-off points.
Yes.
Your favorite three. I'll give you my favorite three.
Please, yeah.
You give
Please.
me yours.
Yeah, please.
Stopping by Woods Will Always Forever.
Yeah.
That will be my number one.
Mm.
After that, I love the brutality of Fire.
Fire and Ice.
Fire
or-
and Ice.
Yeah.
And Birches.
Yeah. Wonderful.
More.
Wonderful.
Not leaping off points, but more realizations
Mm-hmm.
have come to me through rereading Birches than probably any other
Oh.
poem.
Huh.
I absolutely love those three. What about you?
Wonderful. I love Stopping by
Stop
Woods in a
Short.
Snowy Eve. Yeah, I like that one. There's so many good ones. Nature's First Green is Gold, or
Love it.
Hardest You to Hold. I love that. Let me think. There's not North of Boston, but his first book. No, it escapes me now, but it's the poem is a sonnet, and it's the first book, and I think it's in his very first book that he had published when he was from England coming back to the States, and it's a poem basically about early in his life he had gone to. He wanted to propose to this woman who he had gone to school with, right? Trying to think of his wife's name, but they both went to Lawrence High School, and they were both they shared being valedictorian of their high school. He I guess he fell in love with her, and she was on the fence about him, and he went to propose to her, and she said no. And so.
Hopefully, she was wise enough to just be playing hard to get.
Right.
And she knew that he was going to keep trying.
I think I'm not sure, but it was either the first or the second time that he asked, and she said no. That he was very desperate, and he went to this. He decided, I don't know if he was going to do himself in or not, but he wound up in this strange place. I think south of Pennsylvania, in this crazy swamp. Trying to, I don't know if he was trying to do himself in or not, but he wound up running into the wilderness, and survived. But the original poem, I think, is about his going into a very dangerous place,
Yeah.
and I think the last line is like, not I may go into these woods, and you may not know who I was when I left, but when I come back, I will not have changed. I will still be the person that I was, and I will be more true than I had been. It was basically a self-discovery or rediscovery of himself. Sorry, the title escapes me, but
Nevin, would you mind pulling up Robert Frost's first book? Maybe a name or two of the...
It's the very first poem.
Very first poem.
Yeah, it's the first poem on
First poem, first book.
Page one, yeah.
First Robert Frost book,
Yeah,
and the first poem on that book.
yeah. Thanks. Anyway,
He'll find it.
yeah. But I love The Death of a Hired Man. Is a good one.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
That is a really good one.
Yep.
Because that's one of those ones where you don't have to be an old hat with poetry to
Right.
start pulling out, double meanings and symbolisms and
Yeah.
stuff like that. That's a great one for
Yeah.
people to read.
Yeah, it's his more narrative dialogue. That he's having. One called Home Burial. Do you know that one?
No.
Home Burial, it's basically about him. His wife is at the top of the stairs, and I think he's written it in his home in Derry, even though he actually wrote the poem when he was in England. But it unfolds where his wife is at the top of the stairs and he's at the bottom of the stairs, and they're talking to each other in a very dark words, and she doesn't know what to say. She's almost speechless, and he surrenders to the idea that he's got to go bury their son who just died, and the poem unfolds that way in terms of how they're trying to deal with the tension of their own relationship and the idea that they just lost a son, and who's blaming who, or
One of the most catastrophic things for
right.
husband wife to deal with. Yeah.
Right. So so that's a powerful poem. Anyway, yeah. I love most of what I read by him, and they are much clearer today than they were when I first tried to get through his stuff. But he's very much a formalist, but he also takes sort of some liberties, in terms of how he writes, in terms of structure.
So,
yeah,
John Prine,
yeah,
Robert Frost, and Emerson are three names that are massively important to your practice of art.
Yeah, they were heavy influences. And I would say maybe more contemporary heavy influences would be a songwriter named Mary Gaucher. If you know Mary Gaucher.
I don't know that name.
Mary Gaucher.
I don't know that name.
She has a story to tell, but she has a sort of a John Prine sensibility to her. I know that John Prine was important to her in terms of her writing, but she actually was a business owner in Boston and ran a restaurant, I believe, down there. But she was originally born in New Orleans, Louisiana. She had a very hard upbringing. She ran away from home. Later, she discovered, that she was, she had an addiction problem, serious addiction problem.
Yeah.
She wound up in a very dark place, wound up in jail, and then she had a reckoning that writing songs was important to her. And she's since written some really fine songs, some great songs, very telling songs. And one of her best-known songs is called Mercy Now. And it's the title of one of her records. That album, I would recommend that album to anyone. She has a song in there called Prayer Without Words, killer song.
What'd you find, Evan?
Yeah.
So, does A Boy's Will sound familiar?
Yeah, yes.
1913?
Yes.
That's it?
Do you know the first?
The first poem is Into My Own.
That's the one. Thank you.
Into My Own.
Yeah, that's that.
Okay, so that's a good one to make sure
a
everybody reads right now.
Beautiful poem. Yeah, written as a sonnet. Yeah, it's just wonderful.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you. When I first read that, I was just so moved. I was saying, basically, he's saying, you've got to be who you are. You can't. Please don't put any pretenses on. Don't try to please other folks.
Right.
Please don't do that.
Yeah. Be you. Be original.
Be you. Be you. Live and
good to live by.
And discover who you are. Don't be afraid to discover who you are. Take chances. And I forget the last line, but whoever else. I'd have to pull up the couplet, but it's whoever else thought that they knew who I was. When I return, ever so much more that I would be myself. Not to worry, no matter what challenges I face and whatever you think of me, I will be the person I always had been and will be, and I will, because I will be true to myself.
Yeah.
So anyway.
While being in a constant state of becoming, never lose who you are and your identity, and always look for a more perfect way to depict your character.
Those two things, hard to do. But
It's very hard to do.
Those two things, yeah.
And it's something that the younger you are, the less interested in that you are.
Yeah.
And it seems to me the key to becoming is understanding that you should be in a constant state of becoming. Don't lose who you are, but refine who you are and be a more true version of yourself every day.
If you can, yeah. Again, every day is going to keep challenging it. You know, it was
Well,
going
it
to
should.
double check
Evolution
it.
demands friction.
Yeah.
So while you can be upset that you're feeling friction in life, it's a proof positive that you're growing,
Yeah.
that you have an opportunity to grow at very
Yes.
least.
Yes.
But yeah, evolution, whether it's scientific or personal,
Yeah.
it demands destruction.
Yeah.
It's a formidable thing to take on because nobody knows how to destroy you quite like yourself.
No, you're definitely the best at it.
Yeah, if you can make it through it, though, yeah, you can.
What Mary Gaucher had come up with a book. She has a book called Saved by a Song. It's an autobiography. It's a hard one to read, but it's an important one to read because of her early past and so on. But
I feel the same way about Guy Capislatro's album about Pam.
yes, yeah. That's named after an Emily Dickinson. It's let's see, her one about hope. Hope is the thing with feathers.
Yes.
Yes, right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes. Very powerful.
Hit pause right now, everybody.
Please. Yeah.
Go look up that album,
Check
Guy
that out.
Capislátro.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a truly knowing what he and Pam went through. It's a story that I think a lot of people can relate to. Maybe not everybody. But I think when you listen to it and know that that's something that people go through, it forces you to evolve as a person and recognize that everybody is going through stuff. And some people are going through horrific nightmares, and to be very cautious of how you treat everybody. Be supportive, be loving.
Yeah. Because you don't know what their story
Tread
is,
lightly.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good advice.
Wildly
great advice. Yeah.
incredible album, though. It's beautiful. It'll make you cry. And if you're a feeling person, if you don't get hit hard by that album, you may be a sociopath. Seek help. But yeah, welcome back, everybody.
Yeah. Anyway, I think I could be wrong, but I think the Chris Staccato, I think produced that or helped Guy with that album.
believe so.
I believe he did. Yeah. Really well done. Yeah. I saw he put I think the release of that was at the Portsmouth Music Hall stage, or that smaller venue of theirs, and
Music Hall Lounge.
sorry, Music Hall Lounge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember that show. Yeah, that was a hard one.
Yeah.
And Mara was there, and Juliet Nelson was there too, I believe. They were there to help out with Guy, and I think Chris was there as well, and I think Mark McElroy was there as well.
Yep. Another wildly talented,
very talented guy.
musician.
Yeah.
This is something that I think people need to pay a bit more deference to, or to incorporate into their life a little bit more. If you like music, you have to understand that there is a difference between people who are writing songs because they think people are going to identify with them, and are writing so that they can sell a product to people.
Right.
And then there are people who are writing very explicitly from their vantage point, from their point of view. And when you encounter those, you should really write the name down, remember it, and find out everything they've done, because they're giving you direct access to human experience that you either can feel and share a sense of oneness with other humans. I think that's an important thing for people to have from time to time in life, but also to know that you aren't going through necessarily a unique experience. Being human is a language that everybody is forced to speak, and you find things that remind you you're not alone, and that other people are going through them as well. And those are people who are writing from an experience point of view, and a lot of times you'll put the dots together more quickly. You'll grow as a person a lot more, and they are all around you all the time, and you can go out and see them constantly performing. And I think people should take advantage of that more.
Yeah.
Access the local music scene a lot more.
You are hearing these are true stories, from people that are actually experiencing them now, or maybe in a nostalgic way, or however they would like to share what they're feeling. But I mean, these are true feelings.
And when you go see them perform them at a show, the excitement not just that this is an artist that wrote a thing that you identify with, but knowing that that artist is on stage gripping reality with white knuckles and trying to keep from bawling.
Keeping it together, yeah.
Because these are the most human of experiences, and you're seeing a person who went through it or is going through it and is just holding on to reality by a thread.
Yeah.
It makes exciting performances, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Maybe dovetailing both the poetry and the music thing, we, back when we were still running the music store, we got the idea, it might be a good idea to run a coffee house kind of thing, you know, to do that. And I started attending the Exeter Unitarian Universalist Church in Exeter near the Academy.
I see you posting about that from time to time.
Right, yeah. That coffee house originally started at a coffee shop downtown Exeter called the Coffee Mill. It's right across from the bandstand. It's not there anymore. There's a sushi restaurant there now, or maybe it was actually next to the sushi restaurant. But so we actually, the owner said, yeah, let's do some music here. And so it was really mostly just music that we would do, and we would do it. I think it was once a month. It might have been more often than that. And then we decided to move it to the UU Church, and we started again back in the 90s, mid 90s it might have been. Did that for a year or two, and then kind of let that go. And then back in 2008 or so, I was playing in a trio quartet at the time, and we called ourselves Sylvan Roots. That was our band name. I was playing with this guy named Niels Zweig, very fine guitar player from Exeter, and a guy named Dick Krupa from Stratham. And I thought maybe we should get this coffee house thing going again at the church. So we started to do that back in 2008, and we decided, well, let's do it on the first Friday. So we called it the First Friday Coffee House. So that became a thing back in 2008. And because I enjoyed poetry too, I said, you know, let's not just limit it to music. Let's bring in poets, and even, you know, anyone. You know, if you want to come in, and we actually had people coming in to belly dance. We had people to come in to sing an opera, an aria from a particular opera. We had some really interesting people come in the early days, and we had a Renaissance band come that did. You know, this Renaissance type music in a I think they were about 10 strong. It was really cool. Some of the people that came that shared their music. So we ran that for a while, and in you know, it limped along in a year or two, but we really never actually gave up on it. And in the last, you know, after the pandemic, we actually brought it back. After, I think it was on hold for maybe a year or two, we went to Zoom to actually keep the coffee house thing going. A guy actually became a big, he used to show up almost every month when we were doing it on Zoom. And it was cool. You know, we were trying to make the best of a sort of a tough situation, but then we brought it back live probably 2021, in the fall of 2021, 2022. And it's now being well attended again.
Awesome.
So yeah. So
now, when can people find that? When is that?
So it's every first Friday of the month. It starts at 7 o'clock. It's run like an open mic, but we also have a feature performer who comes, and they usually play at 7 to about 7:30, quarter of 8. So about the first 40, 45 minutes is a featured guest. And they could be a poet, or they could be a musician.
Oh, that's awesome.
The last couple of First Friday coffee houses we've had, we had Tom Pirozzoli come, very fine writer from...
Big name from Seacoast lore.
Yep. Yeah, he goes way back, but lives out in the Sunapee area now, I think. But he came and did a wonderful show back in November. It was just great to have him there. I don't know if anybody knows Tom, but he's also a phenomenal painter. I mean, yikes painter. Really, really good.
Yeah.
But great writer, and warm-hearted. You know, real nice to have him. So.
Am I confusing Tom with somebody else, or was Tom Pirozzoli the first person to perform at the Stone Church?
I don't know. I don't know. Stone Church has a long history there.
Long history.
I'm sure Tom may have played there at one point in his songwriting career, but he's been around for 30, 35 years. Tom was writing songs, I think, back, might have even been the late 70s, early 80s, but we didn't open our music store till 86. He was well established, I think, by that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have trivia, Seacoast trivia, scattered through my brain.
Yeah.
From running Seacoast music scene
Sure.
for so long.
Yeah.
And that is one thing that I think is, I don't think I'm lying about that. I think
Yeah,
I
you might be.
think that
Might be right.
Be right.
Could
is that,
be. He's been around for a long time.
that was Tom
Yeah.
Perzola. That was
Yeah.
he was the one who kicked off the Stone Church.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't, but he was the. I think he was the first performer.
Yeah, I have to ask Tom that. Okay,
Yeah,
we're kind of in conversation from time to time. But anyway, yeah. So, but we have this coffee house every first Friday. We had a great duo come in December. They're called let's see now, Diane and Bob Cordis.
Oh yeah,
Do
sure.
you know them? Yeah, Bob.
I know the two of them by way of. Is it the bluegrass community?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Phenomenal players.
Phenomenal players. Yeah.
I asked both of them to come be a part of the Jam of Legends
Oh, cool.
show that I did. That'll be coming back.
Good. Good.
Bob agreed to do it.
Good.
I think Diane was a little more apprehensive, not knowing what is this.
What to expect?
What is this weirdo doing?
Yeah,
Everybody's
Bob-
just getting on stage, having rehearsed nothing, and
Right.
you're just going to make it all
Just,
up on the fly.
just jam. Yeah.
Yep.
They're both very, very talented. Both very gifted.
That's why I
They-
was dying to get
very-
them both
very
there to do
talented.
it. Bob said he would do it. I think I can get Diane to do it.
Yeah. She's terrific. Very good, very fine vocalist and very good writer. But songwriter. Anyway, they were there in December, and so we've been having some really good really good performances and guests come, and hoping that will continue. But we have a guy named Doug Farrell lined up for February. We have a really fine guitar player named Ryan Judd in March. I have a duo coming. If you know Shayna, I think it's her name. I think her last name is Eisenberg. She's a fiddle player.
I don't know.
Lives in Freedom, New Hampshire,
Cool.
and she plays in a duo now with a woman named Becky. I don't know her last name, but I've seen her play. I met her up in the Lakes area at an open mic. I think it was in Effingham, but they're going to come in June. So we're starting to line up some people for the next year. So,
That sounds like an awesome series.
yeah.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to get there.
Yeah.
Well, ask Ryan to do it.
Maybe we should. Maybe we should bring Kirsten on Earth to go.
Well, I was going to say, ask Ryan to do it so that I can come down and play in it and
All
then
right.
see the whole rest of it.
All right,
Because
maybe-
Friday night is a rehearsal night for us.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Ryan. Yeah, sounds good. I'll do that. Cool.
It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a good spot. We have regular patrons that come, poets and musicians. Chris George comes often. Some poets. A friend of mine named Trina Daigle. She lives in Newmarket. Very fine.
heard that name
fine
too.
poet. Yep. You'd probably see her at a beat night. Down with Mike Nelson's beat night and Bruce Pingree.
There's a beat night poetry night going on tonight at the press room. Any interest? You want to go to that after we wrap up here?
Possible. It's
Okay,
possible.
cool.
What is tonight? Monday? Oh, it's Monday night?
It's Monday night, yeah.
all right.
Mark Michael Adams is going to be there,
Cool.
and several others. But
Yeah.
if you're in, I'm
All right.
definitely down.
Might
for
be
going
down
if
for
you wanna
that. I have to do some double checking, but I might.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah. So anyway, yeah. So we're doing that coffee house thing, and it seems to be working out okay.
Go. Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that there's stages, more stages popping up.
Yeah.
I made a post the other day in Seacoast Music Scene about the resurgence. It seems like every week there's a new stage, a new venue, something is opening up.
Yeah.
And it was such a crusher to lose the number of venues that we did to COVID.
Yeah. Book and Bar was sad to see those.
Oh
guys
my
go.
God.
Yeah, I was sad
Book
to
and
see
Bar
those.
was just one of those places.
Yeah, they're
that-
great. Yeah.
Yeah, with Chris Greiner running it, he brought through what seemed like enough people to keep the place hopping and keep new, fresh faces pouring in.
Yeah.
It was such a bummer to see that place go. I
Yeah.
really hope the taco place that's in there now makes use of the stage and the
Maybe they'll bring
sound system.
Maybe they'll bring it back. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
there's no reason to not have that. It was a staple, really, of
Yeah.
the music scene in
Yeah.
the area. And
Yeah.
as another giant name from the area put it so beautifully, Nick Fanuff, for all of us area musicians who can't regularly fill 3S Art Space, this is a home. This is a place where we can come and we can do our thing, and you
Yeah.
don't have to sell 500 tickets
Right.
in order to get a show.
Right.
You know, and it's just it's so helpful to smaller acts and people who are trying stuff out or building a following. If you can sell anywhere from 30 to 60 tickets, they have a following that may get you 15 to 30, and now you're talking about between 60 and 90 people. That's a great show for a small.
I think that's a perfect size. And 50 up.
Yeah,
But 50,
it's
50 to
great.
90 is great. Yeah. That's
It's really
wonderful.
great.
It's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was one place that you could almost guarantee you could hear the band. You could hear the musician, the performer, which anybody who knows me for any period of time knows I will always take shots at crowds in Portsmouth. They never shut up. They're constantly taking pictures of themselves at the show around all of the people, and there's like these little pods of people that are just constantly talking. Listening rooms are where it's at.
Oh, man.
And if you can get people to shut the hell up for a couple hours and listen, that was one of those places you could almost guarantee.
Yeah.
You could get people to shut up for a little while and just listen.
Yeah, listen, that is it. You know, that's, I think anyone else that's there for that reason, to listen.
Yeah.
And the artist.
Right.
You know, it's like heaven. It's like heaven.
I've said so many times, as politely as possible, nothing you're saying right now is nearly as interesting as what this person has worked their life on.
Right.
And you're just missing it. You're
Yeah.
ignoring it because what? What are you talking about? Please, by all means, tell me what you think is so interesting that you need to continue talking to this person while they're doing that.
Right. Yeah. No, anyway.
Sorry, pet peeves, gripes.
That's what. Yeah.
I'm the person who doesn't just shut up all the time. Sometimes I let that one out and let it
That's
fly.
right. That's right. Anyway, one of the folks that met a lot of people coming to the coffee house over the years that we've had it there, 2008. Early on, we actually had a couple come through. Kathy and Keith Sheehan came, and
Another pair of great musicians.
they're wonderful musicians and wonderful people.
Yeah.
And at the time, they were actually had just recently named their act as Kindred Spirits, and they were just writing instrumental tunes at the time. So they came one time, and then we said, hey, we should feature them. And so they came and they put on a lovely show. And over the years, we kind of stayed in touch off and on, and we kind of bump into each other from time to time. And then about this time last year, maybe November of last year, they had come, I think, recently, but Kathy, I think, had left a guitar cable. And so I wanted to get it back to her. And so I dropped it off at her house. And then for whatever reason, we decided that, maybe, we kind of do the same thing in terms of guitar playing. Her style or her sound is really not much different than what I usually do from an instrumental point of view. So we decided to collaborate. And Keith was on board from playing bass because, they work really well together as a duo. So we decided to collaborate earlier in this year, and we started to write songs together, and it was a lot of fun. We actually came out with some really nice tracks. We decided to do our recording at the same place at Mill Pond Studio, and with Jim Prendergast, and we had really early luck with maybe half a dozen songs that we've recorded. Even one with Mara Flynn actually came in to help us out with one of the songs. Keith had an interesting idea about one of the songs we were doing. He heard an angel's voice in one of them, and so we asked Mara to come in. She was so kind to come in and help us with one of those songs. So
Now, the name of this band?
We were toying with a name, and we didn't really know. And they had written a song called "Where the Blue Begins," an instrumental track that they had, and they actually played that song for me one time. And I thought about that, and I said, "Hey," we gave it some thought, and then I said, "Hey, why don't we call it 'Where the Blue Begins'?" And so we came. That was the actual title of the group that we named ourselves.
So this is the same group then
Same.
that you asked me to record some
Yeah.
some
Where
some
the,
drums to.
Where the Blue Begins. That's
Okay.
Keith. Yeah, that's Keith. Yeah.
So I've heard 4 of those songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not long ago, I accepted because holy crap, how do I not accept
Well,
writing some songs?
It's kind of you to listen to them.
Of course, I'm going to listen to them coming out of the U3.
Yeah, good.
But I listened to them and they were fantastic. So I said, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely interested.
Yeah.
I came up with what I was feeling would be appropriate and serve the music the best. And I had no idea how it was going to be received because my understanding was that it was a little bit more rocking. And I said, well,
Yeah,
I don't,
cool.
okay.
Yeah, rock is fun.
I love it,
Yeah.
but that's not necessarily what I was hearing. A little bit in that vein, but more subdued. When I hear rock, I mean, my background is metal, rock,
Cool.
progressive,
Cool.
heavy.
Cool.
But what I was getting was not that,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so I wrote 4 different parts
wonderful.
and had ideas where I could go if they didn't like them.
Yeah.
But I asked Kathy and Keith, stop by, just tell me, am I on the right
Yeah.
page before I show up to record for you guys? And they came by and they said, absolutely love what you're doing,
Cool.
what we're hearing. And I said, okay, good. So I'm not out in left field here. Yeah, same project then. I can't wait to hear the rest of it.
Oh, good. Well, we have been back in, I think it was September, October. I think, could be wrong, but I think Keith was having a little some issues with his back, and so we had recorded maybe 6 or 7 tunes, and then we decided to put it on hold until he actually got a diagnosis on he had some upper back issues, serious pain, and so I think he was hoping that he needed to actually make sure that his health was okay. He might have been having trouble playing. So I think he's already gone to get a diagnosis and has pursued that. And I think that I'm hoping that maybe those things will resolve. It sounds like he doesn't need surgery at this point. So yeah, we're hoping in the new year that maybe we'll continue
Yeah, I hope he's well.
from where we left it. Yeah.
Hope he's well.
Yeah, they just had a lovely party at their house. My wife Pat and I went over to to see them. They had a bunch of guests over this past Saturday. It was wonderful to be there over in Kittery, and I bumped into some other old friends, Lorna and Joe Symes. Do you know Lorna and Joe? You know them?
I have met them once.
Yeah.
I know them from, again, Seacoast Music Scene. I know a lot of
Yeah.
names from Seacoast Music Scene. I know that they're long-standing figures in the community,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't personally know them.
Yeah, Lorna is, she runs a radio program called Global Heartbeat, and but she's also from Scotland, and they used to run a venue up at right next to their house.
Red and Shorties.
That's the one, the Red and Shorties.
I was in there twice.
Yeah, she's red.
I detected an accent. So
Right.
Hearing Scotland, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and anyway, got a chance to catch up with them over at Kathy and Keith. They're wonderful, great musicians, and really wonderful for the community in terms of how they, appreciate music, share their music. They used to have really fine players, musicians come through their place. Saw some really terrific shows there. Yeah. So.
Yeah. That was the first time I went to one of Joel Glenn Wixon's Songwriters in the Round.
Yes. Yeah, that's where he used to have them. That's right. That's right. He used to have them there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I went there with Ryan a couple of times.
That's the first time I met Ryan. It was actually there, and it was at one of Joel's songwriting.
I think it was the first time I met you as well.
All right.
I didn't barge in, but Ryan was talking to you.
Yeah.
And
Cool. Cool.
that was after that, man, we walked away, and Ryan was just dazzled by you.
Well,
absolutely obsessed with your writing and the way that you play.
Well, Ryan's a fine guitar player. I love his singing. I love his voice.
Yeah.
It's just so easy to hear, and
it is soothing. It sounds like your older brother's cooler best friend who's just so cool and really approachable and the opposite of pretentious. Just a sweet, endearing sound.
Yeah.
And I see kids transfixed every single time Ryan starts singing. they just gravitate towards him. They adore him. And I've heard that a couple of times from just absolute killers from the Seacoast community.
Yeah.
That he's their favorite singer.
Yeah, he's so.
And he just hears that and goes, "What? I'm not a sing. I
Right.
sing, but I'm not. That's like
Right.
not what he means
Yeah.
is that he's not a singer. What we actually tell him he means is he's not a professional trained singer. But
Well,
that doesn't mean you're not a singer.
No, he is a singer, and it comes natural to him, I suppose. But
Has to, because he does it and it sounds amazing.
right, he has what I think maybe Bob Dylan or Tracy Chapman or
Good comparison,
you know,
Tracy Chapman there. Yeah.
there's this thing that some singers have, which I think there's a name for it, which it escapes me, but it's a thing that they have in their voice or in their being that conveys a deep emotion, a deep vibration, emotion. There's something in the music itself that is penetrating.
Yeah.
And you get that when you hear particular singers. And
Yeah.
Ryan
Yeah,
has
he's
that.
one of
He
them.
has that. Yeah, he has that. It penetrates you, and you have to pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marty England was another one who said same thing.
Yeah.
You're my favorite singer of all
Yes.
the whole music scene.
Yes. And Marty has a nice.
Oh
He's a
my
great singer.
is.
Man. He's
Talk about a giant of the Seacoast music
Yeah, man,
community.
yeah. He has a wonderful thing when he even solo when he sings and plays guitar. I mean, he's got a thing down.
Yeah, he's one of those ones who's a freakish human. It's weird to know him. You know, it's like a legendary figure from history, and you're like, oh my God, you're like alive and real right now. I can talk to you. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, really good. I got a chance to meet him several times over Chris's. I think he was recording with Chris Magruder for a while. I think they're good friends. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
Yeah, going way back in the day. That's for people who are paying attention or watching. Marty England plays with a band called The Reconstructed with North Village. Pondering Judd back in the day
used to be Pondering Judd. Yeah.
Yep, Pondering Judd was a fixture at the Stone Church.
Right.
Well, all over the Seacoast music community,
Right.
but he and his wife Jen run Continuum Arts Collective, which makes sure that art supplies and instruments and all get into the hands of underserved, underprivileged kids from Maine and New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And we just love what Continuum Arts Collective does. If anyone wants to donate, and they've already donated their maximum amount to Seacoast Entertainer, make sure, give plentifully to Continuum Arts. All volunteer. All of the money goes to making sure that kids have an avenue.
Yeah, to the education program there. Yeah.
Truly extraordinary nonprofit. Love them. Sorry, back to you.
Yeah. No, it's a good thing he's doing, and it's great that it's supported so well, and also that they are having such great success. You know, trying to get music to children or to people that are in need of having that opportunity. You know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Speaking of another group that is a kind of a get-together group, which I actually had met Craig Worth the first time way back when. This would have been before we opened the music stores. It probably would have been 84, 85, probably 85. There was this group called Friends of Music, Salmon Falls Friends of Music, and who meet monthly at different people's homes. We met up in, I think it was Rochester the very first time. And I bumped into Craig for the first time. And through that group, I've also met a lot of wonderful musicians who mostly, some of them are professional, but most of them are just musicians who want to just get together and share their music with each other. And Cynthia Chattis is part of that group. Craig is part of that group, Craig Worth, a really fine songwriter who lives in Durham named Dick Gottschneider. He's an older fellow, but great writer who's been out to Star before. I remember going out to Star with Dick one time. We had a great time. Chris George is part of that group. a poet named Rosemary Staples is part of that group. She's also a songwriter, lives in Elliott, I believe. It's a really great group. A guy named Al Porsche, who's a really fine piano player, also an educator, but I think he's retired now. But he's a wonderful piano player. Rags, blues, classical. There seem to be some educators, for whatever reason, in that group. Some teachers in that group by trade, but also love music. And yearly, they would have a fundraiser. Sometimes in Elliott, sometimes in a different town, where people would come and, this would be an opportunity to perform, and they'd raise money. There'd be tickets sold, and then the money that they would raise would go to a local school for musical instruments.
Yeah.
So it's kind of so
Like what they're up to.
that's what they're doing. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's nice to a guy named Dick Rule, who's also lives in Rochester, and but anyway.
Hi everyone, Sean with Seacoast Entertainer. I hope you're already enjoying one of the greatest communities in the world, and in the homes of that community on social media, like Seacoast Music Scene groups of New Hampshire, Maine, and Massachusetts, and the fastest growing new group, Lakes Region Music Scene, all on Facebook, and at Seacoast Entertainer on IG, as well as Seacoast_Tainer on X. That's in addition to the shows we've been hosting or sponsoring around the region, like Jam of Legends, Writers in the Round, and these podcasts you're listening to now. And this is only the beginning. We're growing, and it takes a lot of work behind the scenes. As anyone who has built a business or organization will tell you, it is effort. When it's entirely volunteer driven, it is devotion. Devotion, though, doesn't pay the bills. And building a world-class website comes with bills. Fortunately, we have a community leader who has stepped up to help as an in-kind sponsor to cover the vast development costs. We could use more. A website as robust and feature-rich as the one they're building us has a lot of services backing it up in order to give you the experience in following the arts you didn't realize you were missing. We'll need to cover the costs of these services. Things like a stream of content from your favorite local artists from the popular social sites, fed to one central location outside the confines of those services, and a calendar populated with schedules of upcoming events across the region. Certainly, not least, is real journalism will make a return to the Seacoast under the leadership of our editor-in-chief, Christopher Hislop. With this comes all of our favorite pieces like 5 Spot and Spotlight. One of my favorite undertakings in all of this is the Musicians Archive, a constantly expanding archive of the musicians and bands who have come before and those who are just getting their stage legs. We all know that we're standing on the shoulders of giants here, so we'll pay tribute to as many as we can identify. From the ultra-popular like Say Zuzu, Thanks to Gravity, The Press Project, and Fly Spinach Fly, to wildly impactful artists whose names you've never heard. When you hear me reading ad copy for businesses, know this: they're paying actual money to support our amazing way of life, engaging with this gift to humanity, the arts.
Well, before we wrap, I want to make sure I ask you some questions.
Yeah, sure.
One of the things I like to know, where, for more than just plugs, first we've covered already, Bob Moore, you're on streaming services.
Yeah.
Is there a website that people can go to if they want to buy albums directly from you, or would that be go to a show? Do you carry stuff around with you at all?
I usually do. I do have some CDs available. I know that they're kind of passé or kind of going by the wayside, but I have CDs from an instrumental guitar collection. I have CDs from a song collection called A Place to Start. I'm be coming out with another one in the coming year. And those songs are also available on Bandcamp. So yeah. So
Bandcamp is a good place.
Yeah, I would go Bandcamp. Also, some of the tracks that Kathy and Keith and I, Where the Blue Begins, are also on there. And
Okay.
There's a couple of good tunes on there from. So yeah, Bandcamp.
If people
Bob
want to
Moore.
follow you,
Yeah.
Do you let people follow you on Facebook? Do you add friends, or do you keep that personal?
No. You can follow. I do have a Facebook page, which I don't usually use that much. A music page. People are happy to go there if they want to, but I do have a website as well, which is. I also dabble into photography, so I have a. It's called More Poetry, Music, and Photography. I think it's all one word.
Moore.
Yeah, more. If you just Googled Bob Moore photography, poems, songs, I think it is.
They'll get it.
Or music. it should be the first hit.
Yeah. So do a something search for that.
Yeah, there's poems on there. There's pictures that are available, photography available for sale. There's songs that are there.
Okay.
Songs will take you to Bandcamp.
Next, who are some? You're in a lot of different mediums, so you can answer this however you want, or as largely as you want. Who are some artists across any medium that have your particular attention right now?
Oh, geez.
I know there's a lot.
Yeah, it's.
But
Yeah. Well, poetry, I would say, always. It's. I sound like an old fart, but I love Emily Dickinson is my hero. Emily Dickinson, Naomi Shaib Nye, who I think has roots in Palestine or the Middle East, lives in Texas. Wonderful, beautiful poet. Rosemary Watola Trummer, a beautiful poet from Colorado. One of my absolute favorites from New Hampshire, Margaret Morrill, who lives in Concord. She writes beautiful poems.
what about Seacoast?
In the Seacoast area, let's see. I would say John Michael Albert. I love his stuff. Mike Nelson. Do you know Mike? He runs he runs Beat Night. He's a wonderful poet. He also has a publishing company called B Monk Press. I have a good friend named Holly Doshbach who goes to my church. She's a very fine poet. Just came out with a book called If You Woke or When You Woke. I think it's If You Woke.
Okay.
Just recently released. Barbara Bald, another poet she's from the Lakes area, lives in Alton. Very, very mature, beautiful poetry. Very, very cool poetry. Very personal.
Awesome.
There's too many, man.
What about music? Some that popped to your mind?
So, I don't know. Well, the people that come, Chris George, I love his stuff.
Good
Chris. I enjoy your stuff. I love Christ on Earth. I love Ryan's writing. Just wonderful.
Thank you. I love his work as well, and Justin as well.
Yeah.
They write 50-50 for Kirst.
Yeah, it's terrific. I would say Joel Glenn Wixon.
He just put out an album, I got, yeah.
Yeah. He's very heartfelt stuff. Trying to think of some.
We talked a bit about Guy as well already.
Yeah, Guy. Yeah. Anything by Guy. He's, what a trooper. Yeah, just wonderful.
There's a lot to name. I know that's
yeah,
a tough one.
Yeah. A lot of good bands too. Yeah.
Rewind. Watch the podcast again. We've talked about
Sure.
a bunch of the different musicians.
Yeah.
Any shows or performances that are coming up that you're particularly looking forward to?
A couple things. One we're I think Cynthia and I are going to be playing at the Epping Library, Public Library in late April. We'll be there, and then at the Brentwood Library in June with a good friend named Wayne Benham, who's a blues harmonica player. So we'll probably be a trio in June. In April, it's possible that Kathy and Keith will be with us too. So there might be four of us.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. So that's end of April at the Epping Library. At the Exeter Library, we're going to be having April is National Poetry Month. So I'm going to probably have about a half a dozen poets there. I think it's a Tuesday. I don't have the date. I think it's mid-April. We'll be doing. We had one this past April, and we had Mark DeCarter was there. He's a very fine poet too. Holly was reading. Rosemary Staples was reading. I had John Michael Albert was there, Mike Nelson was there. Anyway, we'll have some poets again to celebrate National Poetry Month. That'll be in April at the Exeter Public Library. Yeah, so.
I love library shows.
Yeah.
I'm looking at doing a bunch of libraries this upcoming year for the Cursed on Earth Storytime show.
All right. Yeah.
I'd love to pick your brain about some of the people.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Which places to hit.
Sure.
Who might be interested and receptive to the weird thing we're doing.
Yeah. I'd be happy to share you about that. Portsmouth Public Library might be a good spot too. You know.
Yeah.
I think you have to fill out I think there's a request form you find online to actually to go through the motions of that. But they're fine. That'd be a great place to play there. Yeah.
We did Dover.
That's
Berwick.
that's a great library. Dover,
I love it.
and
We had a
that's a
great
good
time
one.
there.
That's a good.
We did Dover Library. We did South Berwick.
Yeah.
There were a few others. What escaping me right now. I'll put that out later, though. I love doing library shows.
Yeah, they're cool. The audience typically is captive.
listen.
It's a captive audience. They're there because they want to be there.
Very specific reason why you're there.
Yeah. And usually it's not often, but sometimes you know everyone, but oftentimes you don't. And meeting people for the first time and having an exchange is really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So.
Well, this has been an absolute pleasure and treat. I love that you agreed to do this.
Thank you, Sean, for
I
inviting
hope
me.
we get to do it again.
Yeah.
Because honestly, you and I have sat and talked a couple of times now, and it turns into like a 2-3 hour conversation. And I think to myself, if there were cameras running, I know people would want to watch this. So now we have an episode where we've gotten your background, and I feel like people have an established understanding who you are. Would you come back and do another one where we just get into any number of whatever?
Of course, and
Awesome.
I'd like to learn a little more about you too, so, about your history, man.
I'm trying to make sure I keep talking about me to a minimum.
Well,
I'm not opposed to talking, and I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
And as we talk in,
well, maybe
in
next
another
time, maybe next time we can have even exchange. That would be cool.
The big thing is, as people are watching these, my presumption is they're going to be getting a lot about me from this podcast to this podcast, and I'll just be repeating a bunch of stuff. But I'm happy to do another podcast with you, and we'll get into talking about whatever you want to talk about.
Happy to come. Yeah.
As always.
Love to. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well.
Yeah. Cool.
Is there anything else? I'm sure we'll cover it in another one.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
No, thank you. Thank you. It's
love all around.
Honor and a pleasure. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
God bless you. God
Well,
bless you.
thanks for joining us again, everybody. This has been me talking to Bob Moore, and I hope you all love him just the same as I do. We'll see you out there. Love y'all.
Yeah. Stay safe, y'all.
Here they are. Without these folks, taking Seacoast Entertainer to the next levels wouldn't be happening. Not to this scale. Tangram 3DS actively supports our music and arts scene and has proudly been part of it for the last 20 years. Their creative pros bring vision to life with everything from 3D renderings and VR to video, animation, web design, and branding. As a team of artists living and working on the Seacoast, Tangram considers a thriving local culture essential to us all for the connections we make, communities we build, and creativity we foster. Visit tangram3ds.com to learn more, see their work, and imagine what they can do for you.